Alright, so this is going to be part 3 to what if Asta and Yuno were adopted by Mereoleona. So in the last part we just got done with Asta choosing what squad he wants to be in, with him choosing the Crimson Lions, as well as some interactions between him and his squad. And also just what we also described what would happen between him, or what would happen because he's no longer in the Black Bulls, and how they would react to the certain missions that they would go on. So in this one we're going to talk about some of the stuff Yuno would have to go through, as well as the what's it called, the dungeon arc, I guess you could say. So Yuno, he would be a bit more respected in this, but some people would still see him as lesser, because even though he is royal, that's only really by name and not really by blood, which a lot of the nobles would see a problem with, but most wouldn't, because it's Mereoleona's kid. You don't want to mess with her. And yeah, so I think Klaus would be a little bit more friendly towards Yuno, and Momosa would still be the same, but I guess the biggest difference is the general, atmosphere around Yuno wouldn't be as hostile as it was before, specifically with the fact that he has a 4-leaf grimoire, just how he does in canon. I think people would be more accepting of it, since they do see him as at least nobility. It is hard for some people to believe that he is royalty, even with the crest, which is a complicated thing for most of the nobles there. So would Yuno actually get, would he go into that interaction with the noble from the previous entry exam? I don't think so in this one. I think the noble would have not really seen, he would be mad, but obviously since Yuno is royalty, and I don't think he would have as hostile intentions, because he would know why. Because I believe in canon, he actually attacks him because that he is, a peasant that has a 4-leaf grimoire, and he sees it as unfair. But if it's a royal who has, so much, potential, how royals are, and so much mana, it makes sense for him. And the fact that he is, of higher status makes it harder for him to get away with such things, because it would be easier for a noble to kill a commoner or a peasant than it would be a noble of his caliber or even higher. So yeah, so we get to the Crimson Lions base, and this is where Asta would be basically hanging out with Leopold, because those two are the closest in age. Leopold would have joined the Magic Knights a little bit sooner than Asta, because he is a bit older, as well as the fact that Leopold does not need to take the entry exam that Asta and the rest of normal people have to do, because nobility and royalty could just be picked into a squad once they get their grimoire. But someone like Asta, which is, like I said, royalty, but wasn't really there, and people didn't know who Mereoleona's kids were, doesn't really get that treatment, or didn't really get that opportunity to get that treatment. So Leopold would have been on missions long before Asta for at least a couple months, because he isn't old enough to be a complete year. So he is a couple months older, giving him some experience greater than Asta. So Fogolion would come and tell Leopold and Asta that he's actually gonna go on a mission, and it's not gonna be patrol, because during this entire time between him getting into the Crimson Lions and this dungeon arc, they've been going on basically patrols around the city, stopping muggers here and there, and basically keeping up the peace. So in this one, Fogolion's telling them that it's an actual mission this time. And what they're going to do is it's a 3-way, or I guess a 3-squad mission. They would be joining forces with the Golden Dawn and the Black Bulls. So it's gonna be a lot of people. So since there's gonna be so many, he's not gonna really bring anyone else. They're only gonna bring Asta and Leopold, since those two need to actually do things right. Because since there's gonna be so many people, it'd be kind of useless to bring out the kind of top figures in for this kind of fight or this dungeon exploration. So they accept it with, because that's their job, they have to accept it. They're pretty excited since Asta's never really been to a dungeon or really heard of them, just how he does in canon. And Leopold does describe what dungeons are, saying that they are basically these places where people can explore and get insane types of magic or items that come from the past. So Asta's very excited. So when they get there, I don't believe the Fregoleon's squad, the Crimson Lions, has a spatial mage, so they would have to get there by broom, with Asta basically riding on the back of Leopold's broom. Leopold would question this, saying, how come you can't ride your own broom? And Asta would say, well, I told you before, I have no mana, so I can't really do that. Again, Asta does have his black form in this, but he doesn't want to use it right now. He still has that kind of timer, or not really timer, but limiter that says he can only use it 2 times a day. So Asta does have a bit more control of his black form right off the bat than previously. So yeah, I guess then canon. So eventually they would get to the dungeon, right? So I would say he would come a little bit after the Black Wolves, since they would have to. Well, I think the Black Wolf base would be closer to the dungeon than someone like Fregoleon's base, because his is like located in the capital, while the Black Wolves is just somewhere randomly in the woods, which is where the dungeon is. So it would be a closer flight for them. When Asta and Leopold would get in there, they would see both Yuno, or they wouldn't see Yuno first. They would see the Black Bulls first. So for this one, we're gonna see that they bring Luck, just how they normally do. Noelle, as well as Vanessa. So they bring Vanessa in this because Magno was there for the last job, or the last kind of village, and he would be grieving over, the village chief, because the village chief would have still have died. So yeah. So Asta would introduce himself, saying he's Asta Vermilion, because, well, he would be proud of his heritage, even if he was only adopted. So Noelle would be like, you're a Vermilion. I don't sense any mana off of you. And this is where Asta would be like, yeah, I don't have any mana. I have anti-magic. And she's like, anti-magic? What's that? And he would somewhat explain, saying he's able to nullify it, any spell. And Luck would be like, oh, really? How about we fight, huh? We could have a quick fight and we can, see who's stronger. And Asta's like, I don't know. We gotta do this dungeon. And I think at this point, Noelle is not really as stuck up, and Asta does seem to be somewhat nice. Leopold would be like, oh, I'm Leopold Vermilion. Me and Asta here are technically uncle and nephew, but we're more like cousins. So they'd be kind of shocked a bit, but then they would kind of quickly get over it. So after this, they would continue walking throughout the dungeon with both Leopold and Asta not really doing much. They wouldn't be really stuck up. Asta wouldn't, and I don't think Leopold would be too much. He just really cares about strength, just like Fregoleon in a sense, but he does sometimes gets that kind of attitude about him, just how he was at the I guess the kind of banquet that the Wizard King threw at that time. So as they're kind of walking along, this is where um, Luck would be like, hey, check this out. And then he would touch a bunch of different traps, which Asta would really have to nullify. So he would do that pretty easily, being able to just touch it with his anti-magic sword. And Noelle is kind of impressed. Like, this is a kind of weird kind of power for her because she's never seen anything like this, and neither has the rest of the squad. So after a bit, this is where Luck would sense the diamond general, the shining general, the smoke general, I believe, and he would go and try to find him. So he's off trying to fight the shining general while the others continue the dungeon. So eventually they would get to this plant monster, and it'd be a lot easier to fight the plant trap because first of all they have Leopold, who has fire magic, as well as Asta, who has anti-magic. So Noelle would have to get that wand that she does in canon, where she uses it to help with her spells. So she would still go to the black market to go get it with Vanessa. So she still has that. She still has somewhat trouble basically controlling her magic, just how she does in canon, but she is trying to learn a bit. So they do take out the plant monster pretty quickly, and this is where the Golden Dawn would come. This is where Asta would be like, oh hey Yuno, how's your squad been? And this is where Klaus would be like, you know this person? Who is he? And this is where Yuno would basically say, well, that person right there is my brother, Asta. And this is where Klaus would basically apologize to Asta, saying, I'm sorry, I did not know you were royalty. And Asta says, well, don't worry about it. That kind of status doesn't really matter to me. And this is where Klaus would be like, no. It really was my fault. I shouldn't have addressed you, even if I didn't know you were royalty. Asta would have said, no, it's fine. It honestly is. As they're kind of talking, this is where Noelle and Mimosa would catch up and talk about what they're doing. And then she would realize who Asta was. So she would ask about Asta to Leopold. How is he? And, well, this is where Leopold would talk about how great Asta is, how, ambitious he is, as well as his unique power. So, technically, Mimosa and him are, I don't know what you would call it. Maybe, because Leopold is Asta, or Leopold is Mimosa's cousin, and Asta is Leopold's nephew, technically. So I'm not sure what the relationship between Mimosa and Asta would be called, since a lot of people in my comment sections want there to be an Asta x Mimosa for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe because they're both royalty, but again, I'm not sure what you would call that relationship. If you guys know, you guys can tell me down below. The cousin of your uncle, what would you call that? Anyways, so after this, Klaus wouldn't be mad at really anyone there. Maybe the Black Bulls a little bit, talking about why do we have the Black Bulls here? We really only need the Crimson Lions and the Golden Dawn. And Vanessa and not really Luck, because he's not there yet. So Vanessa and Noelle a little bit are kind of mad at this, and they would be like, what do you mean they don't need the Black Bulls? We were assigned here by the Wizard King himself. And they would have stars because of the village attack and things like that. So they wouldn't really bring it up in this point. I don't think so, because Asta wouldn't be there to do that. So after this, Klaus would be, head off with Yuno and the rest to go to find the vault. I don't think Leopold or Asta would go with them. like just yet. I think they would still go with the Black Bulls since none of them really have, well, transportation magic at this point. So that's what they would do. As they're kind of walking along, this is where they feel or they sense that kind of magic coming off of Luck, and he's fighting someone very strong. So the Black Bulls want to go and help him, and Leopold and Asta are kind of at an odds. Well, not really at odds, but they're at a crossroads, and they're thinking of what they should do. Asta says they should help since they are fellow knights, so it's the best thing to do. But Leopold says, well, we should do what the mission says and go to the vault. But then again, I do want to get into a fight, so that's what they go and do. Since there's a lot more members here, it's an easier fight against, well, the mage, the general. Asta, at this point, he knows how powerful the mage is, and, well, so does everyone else. Asta would have used his black form in this just to make it a lot easier to, well, take out the smoke mage when he would have used his kind of smoke kind of field to distort everyone's magic sensing. And because the black form hones in at the strongest mana, which the general should have since he is, well, a general, which is equivalent to a captain, it would have made it easier for him to go for him, as well as not being able to sense Asta because of his lack of magic. Would have made the fight even easier than it was in canon, without needing Noel to launch him and for Luck to distract him either. So again, it'd be pretty easy for this fight. So that's the first time Asta has used his black form today, so he has one chance left. So they would continue walking to the vault, and this is where Klaus and the rest of the Golden Dawn would be there at the entryway of the vault, and this is where Mars actually attacks. It does a sneak attack on Mimosa, taking her out of the fight, having her have to use her recovery magic on herself, and having Klaus and Yuno fight him instead. Obviously, Klaus is at a disadvantage because Mars is such a powerful character, and actually tells Yuno to leave him there so that he could go to the vault and secure it. Obviously, Yuno doesn't agree to this and actually stays to help Klaus. And Klaus, as he's doing this, he creates a bunch of crystal kind of clones of himself. So he's doing this to kind of weather them down, and eventually, when they're at their lowest point, this is where Asta and the rest of the group would come, that including Leopold, Noel, and Vanessa. So as this is going on, Asta does have a little bit, or I guess he wouldn't really have too much backlash from using the black form, so he would have been able to take out most of the crystal guards there. And as they would, as more and more would pile up, this is where Vanessa would actually come in and actually use her string magic, or I think it was either string or thread magic, I'm not sure. She would actually use that magic to basically slow down the crystal clones because they get tied up in their strings. And as she's doing this, this is where the rest of the characters will come out and help. Things like basically Leopold. I think Leopold and Vanessa would actually combine their magic, so he would basically light the strings on fire, and as they would combine their magic, this string would basically explode, blowing up any crystal clones that were together or basically strung up. So eventually Asta is against he's actually against Mars when Mars uses that kind of iron kind of suit. I mean crystal suit, but you get the idea. So this is where Asta, after getting somewhat beat up by the crystals, since there'd be so much, he would actually use his black form again, just so he's fast enough to get by his armor and actually hits Mars. So Mars would be knocked out like he was in canon, and Klaus would use his restraining magic to go and, well, take him out, or basically have him secure. And he would thank both Yuno and Asta for helping him and the rest of the group there. So they get to the entryway and they don't know what to do. Asta says, "Let me try something," and he cuts the doorway and basically just opens the doorway for them using his anti-magic. In there they would find a bunch of different items and treasure and things like that. Yuno would still get the spirits, and Mimosa would get that new cloak. And I guess they would all each get something different. I think Leopold would probably get some new robes, something similar to what Mimosa got during that kind of encounter. So as they're kind of doing this, they're just looking at the different stuff they're able to get, and Yuno would get the wind spirit, like I said. Klaus would be kind of strict here. He would tell him not to really touch anything because, well, they need to report it to the Clover Kingdom. And as they're about to leave, this is where Mars actually gets back up, and because he gets back up, it's because of his secondary magic, which is the fire magic, and he actually uses flame recovery magic to get himself up. And this is where he actually hits Noelle and Asta. Asta gets swung back into the wall, and Noelle is pretty injured. And where Asta is, he actually gets past the wall, and this is where he gets his second anti-magic sword, that being the demon Dweller sword, I believe. So this is the one with the range attacks. And Asta, he is kind of bloody from this. This was a very powerful hit, and he's bleeding from his forehead and things like that. So he rubs off the blood, and it actually goes into his hair. His hair basically becomes red, kind of like the scene with One Punch Man with Garo, where he decides to be a real monster. So after this, he actually gets out of the hole, or of the wall, and actually uses his demon dweller sword, and he actually uses a spell that he actually gets later on in the story, which isn't too big. There hasn't been too many fights with it, but basically he slashes forward, and his sword actually shoots out slashes of anti-magic. So it's not like he's slashing with someone else's magic like he does in the show, but instead it's anti-magic. So after he does this, this is actually a spell, not like a passive thing he gets with the sword. So this is Asta's first sword, or first spell that he gets with his sword. I forgot exactly what it's called. I think it's called like Black Slashes or something. I don't remember, but yeah, he basically uses these black slashes to attack Mars, and because he can't really block against this because it's made of pure anti-magic, he actually gets hit, and his flame spell actually goes out. As they're kind of continuing, because he was knocked out, they're easily able to get out of his kind of crystal magic, and they're about to leave as the dungeon is basically crumbling, and they decide to go, and they try to get Mars, but it doesn't really work because he falls off, and well, they leave with Mars still being in there. But Mars doesn't actually die because of the smoke mage actually coming to save him. So yeah, at the end of the day, Klaus does have a lot of respect for both the Black Bulls for helping them, as well as Yuno and Asta. He isn't too friendly with the commoners and peasants as of yet. He's kind of more mellow out to them, but not as close as he used to in canon. So yeah, this is where I'm gonna end it. You guys can tell me down below what you like about it and what you want to see in the future of this series. And if you like this series, give it a like, and if you want to see more stuff, remember to subscribe to my channel. And yeah, if you made it to the end of the video, remember to comment down CS so I know that you support the channel. And with that being said, this is gonna be the end of the video. So yeah.